The Khilafah of Abu Bakr. Now it goes without saying that the Prophet's death ﷺ was a huge shock to the Muslim state. So much so that severe divisions in the state started to quickly form. Some clans wanted to split the leadership into parts. Some clans said, we'll remain Muslim, but we're not going to pay the zakat. Some clans even wanted to leave Islam altogether. It was quite chaotic for a while. So how did Abu Bakr handle this mess? First and foremost, he kept the same core around him that the Prophet ﷺ had. These high caliber Sahaba and influential people in Medina, so they can consult and advise him. It was these people that helped consolidate the army, and they went to each rebellious tribe and fought them one by one until they came back fully to the rule or domain of Islam. In all, their efforts took a little under 2 years to complete. But in the end, the entire Arabian Peninsula was back under Islam, and the Ummah was stronger than ever. So here again we see that even though the society was struck with a huge step back, a strong core backed by even stronger ideas led to a huge step forward. The Khilafah of Umar. Umar ruled for a total of 10 years, and during this time Islam spread far beyond the Arabian Peninsula to the whole Middle East. During this expansion, a big decision that this new core faced was how to effectively control this large area. Thus Umar passed a rule that forbid any of the top elite Sahaba from moving out of the capital Medina. Some of the Sahaba didn't like this rule because they wanted to go out and explore new opportunities in these newly expanded lands. But of course, they obeyed their Amir. Now they passed this rule because they understood the massive importance of keeping this core group of high caliber men intact in the capital, so they can always be available for Umar to consult. In other words, they realized that with such a large state now, they're going to be dealing with all kinds of different people and different problems. So they needed the best amongst them to always be around the leader so he can stay sharp. Now just to give you a little insight into how this consultation process worked, here's a small example. When the Muslims conquered what's known today as modern-day Iraq, one of the big issues that arose was how to distribute this newly conquered land. The Emir didn't just decree a decision and impose it on his people. Rather, he chose to sit around with his core and discuss the issue in depth before he reached a decision. The Emir did this because he wanted the core to be part of the process, which in turn taught them and made them stronger. And remember, I just want to reiterate that anybody could have been part of this core and thus part of this process, just as long as they proved their worth and showed that they cared about the ideas of Islam above anything else. The Khilafah of Uthman. One of the first decisions made by Uthman under the advice of his core was to reverse Umar's ban and allow any of the core advisors at the time to retire or leave Medina to a different part of the state if they wanted to. And many took the offer. This decision by Uthman and these men left the core pretty thin in Medina. So of course Uthman had to fill these advisor roles, and he chose to do with people he thought he could trust the most at the time, namely his family members. Unfortunately, what ended up happening is this new core didn't adjust properly, and over time became a very closed club where only Uthman's family members were allowed in. Not to mention that this indirectly reinforced into the whole society the concept of tribal bonds. Of course, all this wasn't good, because remember, the Islamic State was still growing at the time and new peoples were still being incorporated. Well, some of these new people in societies who truly loved Islam and its ideals wanted to be part of the core and wanted to be part of this process. In other words, they wanted to help steer the ship because now they had a stake in it. But the core's existing policy and lack of adjustment kept them out of this consultative process, which just frustrated and alienated these new annex societies, to the point where eventually Uthman was sadly killed by quite literally a large mob. The Khilafah of Imam Ali. When the people chose Imam Ali to be their next leader, he was about to face a very difficult task, for he inherited this now frustrated and fragmented state. And to make things more difficult for him, the mob which killed Uthman was one of the first to give him bay'ah, which means that some of these people were now part of his army. Nevertheless, Imam Ali took on this difficult task, and one of the first decisions he made was to recall back to the capital some of the core Sahaba that left during Uthman's rule. He did this because he knew that before his rule and the state could be strong again, he would have to get the people under control. Thus, he needed the help of a loyal and intellectual core to help him accomplish this very important first step, similar to the tactics used during Abu Bakr's rule. In addition to this task, Imam Ali also set out with the army in order to get the bay'ah from all existing governors at that time, again to reinforce his core and uplift the state. Muawiyah's rebellion. One of the governors or walayas during this time was Muawiyah, who happened to be Uthman's cousin. And he was governor of the Sham area, which is equivalent to modern-day Syria and Lebanon today. Now before I continue with these historical facts, I just want to spend a few seconds telling you about this man. Muawiyah was never part of the Prophet ﷺ's core. For instance, he never lived in Medina with the Prophet ﷺ, and he never fought in any battles with or for the Prophet ﷺ. In other words, he was never part of the original establishment that was always around the Prophet ﷺ and constantly proving their worth. That being said, let's continue with the facts. Now when Imam Ali finally arrived to get the bay'ah from Muawiyah, Muawiyah refused. At that time he made the claim that the killers of Uthman have to be avenged first before he gives his allegiance. Now technically this was a valid claim, because in Islam there is a rule that states that the relatives of the one killed have right over the killer. But what Muawiyah failed to say or do was recognize that Imam Ali's claim for bay'ah Islamically took precedence over his claim for revenge. In other words, first he should have given his allegiance to the new leader, and then he would get the revenge he was entitled to, which is exactly what Imam Ali told him. It should also be mentioned that most of the old core Sahaba that were still around at that time, the majority of them all sided with Imam Ali on this issue as well. This is just a clear example of double talk by Muawiyah. For if he really cared about this issue, and he really cared about the well-being of the state, then he would have recognized this, and he would have given bay'ah in order for everybody to move forward. But instead he refused, and the result was a messy battle called the Battle of Safin, where so many Muslims died for an issue that could have been easily resolved. Events after Imam Ali. Shortly after this battle took place, Imam Ali was sadly killed. And after, there was about a 6-month debate back and forth about who should be the next leader. And then finally it fell on Muawiyah's lap as he desired. Muawiyah ruled for a number of years. And he did rule by Islam. That is, until towards the end of his rule. Before he passed, the issue of who was going to rule next arose. And instead of allowing the Ummah to choose as he should have, he committed a major crime against Islam. Not a crime against a person or a group. No, against Islam itself. He passed the power onto his son Yazid, thus corrupting the Islamic system into some kind of kingship. Of course Yazid accepted, which passed this horrible crime onto him. But suffice it to say, there was many influential people during that time that did not stand for this and put up a fight against Yazid and this crime. Great men, like the famous four Abdullahs, Ibn Umar, Ibn Abbas, Ibn Abi Bakr, and Ibn Zubair. And of course the great man Hussein, who fought against Yazid and even sacrificed his own family rather than give bay'ah to a man who committed such a crime against Islam itself. Final thoughts. Now one question that should arise in your mind is, what's our point? Why the history and analysis of something that happened so long ago? It's simple. Today we live in a world where Muslims basically take one side or the other when discussing these events. Or perhaps I should say they take two extremes. On one side you have those Muslims that label themselves Sunni, that try to sugarcoat our history as if everything was good, even Muawiyah and Yazid, and that all the fitna and fighting that took place was caused by a handful of conspirators or evildoers. This is not only a conspiracy mentality, but more importantly, it's a very shallow political understanding of what really happened. And clearly this viewpoint stems from a reaction to the other side. On the other extreme, you have those Muslims that label themselves Shia, who view our history and these events as nothing but a big conspiracy, specifically designed against the Prophet's glorious family, ﷺ. But the facts are that these crimes committed weren't just against the Prophet's family, ﷺ. They were crimes against all Muslims. And I've already mentioned that many Muslims, in addition to the Prophet's family, ﷺ, stood and fought against Muawiyah and Yazid. But most importantly, our main point is, even though our history sounds a little chaotic, we Muslims must remember that despite this chaos, the Islamic State as a whole was expanding and progressing. These struggles throughout our history were political in nature, meaning there were quarrels of who should be the one in charge. But no matter who ended up being in charge, they did rule by the people's chosen way of life, which is Islam. But unfortunately, what ended up happening over time is that people got sick and tired of the political infighting over who should be the next ruler, and they lost interest in participating in the Islamic political system, to the point where they stayed away from politics altogether. Thus the result was the rulers were not held accountable, and there was no efficient system to keep the core active and enlightened. While this did not result in the collapse of the whole system at once, it is one of the major factors that gradually weakened the state and made it vulnerable. Alright, brothers and sisters, that's our historical analysis. Now again, our objective today was simply to present a viewpoint of our history that perhaps you've never heard before. Now before I go, I just want to quickly stress, we need everybody who views this video to go to our website. Whether you like this video, hate this video, I should have said this, I didn't say this, etc., etc. Whether the comment is positive or negative, we need you to go to our website and send us an email. We want to know. No. We need to know what you think. You know what I'm saying? Especially you locals. Alright. For now, this is your boy Danny. Assalamu alaikum, and I'm out.